Hello, and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. I am really, how do I say this? I am excited and proud to have Michelle Weger here with us today. I received a copy of her new book, Don't Snooze Your Dreams, yesterday. Look at this lovely picture of Michelle and Quinn on the back cover. Such a good book. I have to be honest. I didn't go for my morning walk or run today because I needed to finish reading Michelle's book. I started reading it
Oh,
yesterday afternoon when I had work to do and I couldn't put it down. I read it until, I don't know, sometime after 9 last night. And then I got up at 6 something this morning and I finished the book. Um, this book was a really interesting read for me. And I shared this with Michelle via text. Michelle and I have worked together since the end of 2017. I have been advising her in her business. And I told her as I read her book, I can see the influence that I have had on her life in a lot of the things that she's written about. And it makes me really proud for a couple of reasons. I have coached hundreds of people, and not everyone is willing to act on the things that you teach them. Not everyone retains the information and puts it into practice like Michelle. That's one of the things that really stood out for me and made me proud of the work that we have done together. And then the second thing that made me proud is, I joke with Michelle sometimes that I could be her other mother. Her words are now, it's like a ripple in a pond, right? The work that we've done together is now going to impact other people in other ways. And it makes me really proud to see. um I feel like I'm being selfish because it makes me proud to see the impact that I've had on your life, and it makes me proud of you to see just how much, pardon my language, hard shit you've done. So, if you are new to Michelle, let me tell you, this young woman lives with narcolepsy, and it's a lot harder for her to do things than it is most people. So, I want you to imagine that you've gone 48 hours without sleep and you feel completely exhausted. That's how Michelle feels every single day. And so, you've all heard me say before, my favorite quote is the John Maxwell one: the best excuse is the worst excuse because it's the one you believe. Michelle has an excuse that is a real legit excuse that she could use every day to stop her from living her dreams, and she doesn't. So, that's a
oh.
really, really long intro and not even the official intro, but Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you.
Super happy to have you here. And for those of you listening, there's going to be two shows. We are going to have a conversation about doing hard things, and we're going to talk a little bit about Michelle's book. And then we're going to actually switch gears and we're going to do a second episode where we're going to talk about what it took to write this book. And I don't know what they are yet, but I know Michelle always taps into some really unconventional ways of doing things, like, asking her brain to figure stuff out when she falls asleep at night. And so I can't wait to hear what she did to write this book. So let's get started. I have my first question for you is, in this book, you do a really great job of asking questions throughout the book for the reader. And one of the questions that you ask that I really like, and I'd like to know your answer to this question, is what consequences have you faced as a result of being yourself?
Um, oh, that's a good one. I mean, I think anytime you put yourself out there, there's a risk of backlash, or at the very least, there's some small people out there. They might make comments, they might say things. So one of the ones that really stands out for me is last year I filmed a TV show for CBC, which is like Dateline in the United States. And it was undercover. They asked me to take my service dog Quinn undercover on some Ubers, Lyfts, and taxis. And when I said yes, I knew it was going to be a bad experience. I'd done enough of that in my life to know. Uh, I didn't know how awful 8 hours straight of it was going to be, but I knew it would be bad. But it was actually some of the comments afterwards on like the YouTube channel and things like that, when the TV show was aired, there was a lot of people standing up for people with disabilities and wanting things to be right. And then there was people that are jerks, that you can tell they were going out of their way to find something mean to say about someone that day. And the first couple I saw, it shocked me. I know people say things, but normally they are not that overt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't regret doing it. And I actually posted something just before recording this today on LinkedIn because I had another bad Uber experience and I knew I could stay quiet. I also knew that by posting something, I'm going to get some of those comments again. But myself is someone who stands up for what's right and says something when, after following the normal customer service paths, if it's not resolved and it might hurt or affect other people, then I'm willing to be the one who gets the comments to make it easier for other people.
I love that. So even in facing consequences of being yourself, you are continuing to be an advocate for other people. So I've known you a long time. You weren't always as strong in your convictions for being an advocate for others. That is a hard thing to do because you are putting yourself out there. Can you tell us what caused you to decide that you were no longer going to be quiet?
So the first time something really bad happened was when we were removed from a United flight on a leg that we'd done so many times before. It was the same gate crew. They all tried to stand up for us, but the flight attendant would not let us be on that plane. And after getting removed, they put us on the highest end seats they could find on another airline, put us in the lounge upstairs, hoped we'd be quiet. And I didn't know what to do. And both you, Lisa, and my mom posted on Twitter independently. And I didn't ask either of you to do it, but I wasn't able to do it at the time. I was too in my head of what people would say because I was so embarrassed that we were removed from a flight like criminals or something, just because my service dog's too big. And then after that one, I had a chance to really think about it because those messages that the two of you posted led to me getting a phone call from United where they did make things better. And I have not had that experience ever again. So it was seeing role models who happened to also be my allies in this case, doing something that was too scary for me in that moment, and seeing the positive impacts and realizing that by being brave, much greater things will come from it. Now, I didn't the next day go out and start, being the queen of all advocates. It's all a growth process, but that's where the shift happened for me.
Yeah, in your book, you talk about it almost like a staircase, right? It's one step at a time, one step up at a time. And you might stay on one level for a while and then you take another step. And I think what I'm hearing you say in that case is having other people advocate for you and seeing how it benefited you made you see how you advocating for yourself was actually going to benefit others.
Yeah. Yeah. Not everyone. I was already further up the stairs than I realized.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something like you two did for me. I wanted to do something for the people who were at the very bottom of the stairs still.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things that you probably face every day with your disability is that you look normal. You don't look like someone who has a disability. You're an attractive young woman, you're friendly, you're outgoing, and people look at you and think, oh, she's one of those people who's faking needing a service dog. And so that has to be hard. I mean, I have been with you when we've gone to a restaurant and have had to advocate when we've called in advance, we've told them there's a service dog, and then they put us at some stupid table near the bar where there's no place for the dog to lay under the table. And I've had to advocate with the manager. And then I've watched some dumb person in the lobby ask you in front of a crowd of people, what's wrong with you anyways, that you need a service dog.
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes people don't realize how hard it is to just be someone with a disability and someone who has a dog, um, in terms of how other people respond to that invisible illness, so to speak.
You're absolutely right. It's I would say there's more of a percentage that is positive now than there
Mhm.
was 6 years ago when I first stepped out in public with Max, my service dog at the time. But there is still just as many people that are openly cruel, intentionally so,
Mhm.
loudly so. And it's that middle percentage that's quiet that some of them have shifted to being positive. So it's a
Mhm.
nice movement. But what's still missing is that when people are being cruel, there's no one standing up. There's no one saying something as simple as, that's rude, don't do that.
Mm.
And we tell our kids not to bully, we tell our kids not to be bystanders. But I think it shows how hard it actually is to walk the talk.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so in your book, you talk about the paper dinosaur and the terrorist in your head. I love the terrorist in your head. Like, and the paper dinosaur, I had to look it up, the dinosaur that you cite in the book. Can you tell us the difference between the paper dinosaur and the terrorist in your head? And, can you maybe talk a little bit about why you label things like that to help you overcome fears?
I love a good metaphor. It allows me to rationalize if something is real or a game, a trick that your brain is playing. And all people have these tricks. The paper dinosaur comes from the time of caveman, where there were real dinosaurs. And if you failed to fit in with the group, the society, you're out of the cave. Goodbye. And if you're out of the cave, then a real dinosaur, it's going to eat you. Game over. So everyone here today has evolved from those who stayed in the cave. Now, the real dinosaurs are long gone, but our brains still have so much fear of the social rejection, and it's an irrational fear. So for me, when I'm feeling that type of fear of what will people say? What will they think? What if I do it badly? What if I'm a loser? I have to think, no, this
I
isn't a
don't I
real
don't want people to think
dinosaur.
I'm a dick.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. One of my famous slogans that Lisa loves so much.
You just blushed.
I mean, yeah. Lisa said a naughty word on her podcast.
There's going to be an E next to this episode. Oh no.
It's we all have those fears, but they're not actually going to hurt us. Like the worst thing that happens is we turn red, like I am right now on this podcast. Thank you for that. But by calling it the paper dinosaur, for me, it showed how weak and thin and fake it is. You can tear it up. It can't actually kill you. So let's move on and actually decide if we even want to face what it is. But with the knowledge that the worst thing that could happen is we feel embarrassed.
Okay, and then tell me about the terrorist in your head.
Well, mine or
Just in general, like talk to us about, the metaphor of the terrorist in your head. Because
yeah.
I love that because we all have, a gremlin in our mind that tells us
Mm-hmm.
things that are not true, but you call yours a terrorist. And,
Yeah.
you talk in the book about as you get stronger, so does the terrorist. So like
Yeah, it
talk
does.
to us about that.
So it's that voice, that inner voice that everyone has. And it's not a nice voice. And, I've heard RuPaul calls it the inner saboteur, which I love.
Mhm.
And, I've heard the itty bitty bleep committee. There's all similar terms, but for me, I didn't feel like any of those encompassed how damaging that voice is, because the terrorist it wants what it wants, which is to keep you where you are because that's a safe place. And that motivation is, again, evolution based. It's normal. That's why we all have it. But the terrorist is willing to blow everything up to get what it wants. So it's going to make you feel very small, and it's going to hurt you and keep you tiny. And when you do overcome it, when you do the scary thing anyways, you'll feel like it's gone away, right? You're afraid to do job interviews. You're afraid that they won't choose you. And then they do, and you get the job. And you won because the voice was wrong. But it's going to come back. And because you are that voice at the end of the day, you're now stronger from overcoming the voice. And unfortunately, that means the voice is stronger now too. So each time you take a big leap in life, so is the terrorist in your head.
I love it. I love it. I think that there's so much validity to that, and the stories we tell ourselves and the things that we are afraid of, sometimes they make no sense. And when you are brave enough to move forward, you're given the gift of realizing that they make no sense, but that doesn't mean that they don't come back again. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's a great moment of intentionality. Is this real, or is this the terrorist in my head trying to stop me from becoming a bigger person? And I think there's probably some caveman stuff to that too, right? You don't want to
Surely.
be too big for your britches. You don't want tall poppy syndrome. Who do you think you are? All of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
can get in the way of really growing and becoming the person that you aspire to be.
Yeah.
So on that note, how did you in your book, you talk about the fact that there are really only two fears. Can you tell us what those two fears are? And can you tell me how you discovered it? And how does that serve you? And how can it serve others?
I believe that every fear falls into either the social, paper dinosaur category, or physical. Physical are the things that can actually kill, maim, damage you for real. So those are things like sharks or bungee jumping or cliff diving. Or if you're in a precarious financial position, a physical fear could even be, losing your job
Mhm.
or anything to do with the health of your loved ones. There's a lot of people that aren't in a position where they can take risks. And sometimes they are social fears, which are the paper dinosaurs. But I do feel it's important to note that for some people in some situations, periods of time, it is a physical fear. They can't risk losing what they have truly because they're on a fine line.
Mhm.
And when you divide the fears up, I actually say I'm not encouraging anyone to face their physical fears. I share a couple of mine in the book and admit what they are and why I'm not going to do anything about it. It's the social ones that actually hold us back from getting our dreams, hence the title of the book. And those are the ones that I lay out the method to overcome.
So the social ones are really all about recognizing that you're basically at the end of the day worried about what other people are going to think.
Every time, right?
Yeah. If
What
you
if I
boil it
do a bad
down,
job?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you boil
Yeah,
it down, it's fear of embarrassment.
every time.
It's fear of embarrassment. It's fear of not looking the way you want to look in the eyes through the eyes of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all face those fears at times.
Of
I don't care
course.
who you are. There's always something that comes up that will cause you to worry about those things. And I know that in my experience, what I have found is that the stories that I'm telling myself are rarely true. The things that I'm thinking are rarely true. And,
Mm-hmm.
even sometimes when you go into having a hard conversation with a client, for example, you go to the call, you
Yes.
think, oh my God, they're going to be so mad. They're going to fire me. They're going to tell everybody about me. They're going to sue
Mm-hmm.
me. Like you tell yourself these terrible stories. And then you get to the conversation and it's not at all what you expected. It's calm, it's reasonable, it's amiable. And
Mhm.
you have to remind yourself that every time something like this happens, it's no different than the I need to talk to you. We immediately think
Yep.
somebody is canceling their services or they're quitting their job, right? And so, I've gotten into the habit of even saying to my team, I need to talk to you and you're not in trouble.
Yes.
Because I know the
Yes.
first thing they think, the story that in their mind is, oh my God, I did something wrong. So it's
Mhm.
interesting that the more you become self-aware that your default thinking tends to be negative worst case scenario. And if you can
Yes.
flip
Stay in a
it,
cave.
yeah, if you can flip it and say, well, what's the best outcome? Something Alan Weiss taught me years ago is he said, what's the downside?
Yeah.
What's the downside? Because I think I was quoting something and I thought my price was too high. And he said, what's the downside? If they say no, you're no worse off than you are right now. And so I
Exactly.
think it's an important question to ask yourself too when you're feeling those fears.
Mhm.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about autoimmune disease. So you and I both
Mhm.
have autoimmune. You have narcolepsy, I have Crohn's disease, and it can be hard. And
Yeah.
neither one of us really talk about it or complain about it. I know that when I wrote something about that recently online, sharing your book, and somebody responded, "Oh my God, I didn't know you have Crohn's disease. Like, how do you manage that?" And I know for me personally, I've never wanted to be seen as a victim because of my illness. And yet, there are times when it can take you out. There are times when you really, you talk about physical versus social fears. There are times when a physical ailment really can make it hard for you to do things. So, can we talk a little bit about how can people overcome when they're feeling down and out? So, take me back to when you first were diagnosed with narcolepsy and you were doing all the research on what life might look like, and all the fears were coming up and the terrorist was raging inside of your head, and you didn't know a whole lot then about how you were going to normalize your life. Your driver's license had been taken away from you. You were young, you were hopeful about your future, and now all of a sudden you've had to give up the university degree that you wanted and career that you wanted, and you're in this place where nothing looks the same. How did you double down and become resilient enough to keep going?
So I credit two things for that. And they are the same two things I use to this day. The first thing is I tapped into the allies in my life, uh, and looked for some new ones as well. People who already loved and supported me, even if I ended up living in my mommy's basement, and which was my worst case in my mind at the time. And I also got myself a project, which was Max, my service dog. And I could pour everything that I was feeling about not having control or the ability to change things into him and that.
And
I
and
could
just to
learn.
clarify,
Yeah.
he wasn't your service dog when you got him as a
Oh, no.
project. Like, he became
No.
your service dog, but he was a project first.
Oh, yes. A big renovation, a big, big one. Yeah. Lots of stories about that in the book. And he kept me very busy, let's say. And it took years. There is actually an article online that you can find from when I had him maybe a year or so in. And in that article, it was about the Great Dane walking group, where it was all Great Danes, and we went to the park together once a week. And in that article, I proudly say that Max only got in one dog fight that day. And I was so proud about it because it happened so much more before that. It
Oh my
was,
goodness. I
yeah.
feel like I should get the picture of Max and Sunshine, where Max is laying on the deck at our place like a regal giant, and my little wiener dog is stretched as far as she can stretch, nose to nose, sniffing to see if it's safe to be with Max. And he was just this calm, gentle giant.
Yeah.
I feel like I
Yeah.
should find that picture and put it in
You
the
should.
episode.
Yeah, my renovation project went well, needless to say.
Hmm.
Um, but I think when things are hard for yourself, a great way to build confidence is doing something for someone or something else. It
Mm-hmm.
gives you little proofs that you are capable and you are valuable and you can do hard things and succeed, which in a time, when you've gotten horrible news yourself or huge health problems or where you can't control that much for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy to have the terrorists completely take over and lose all move forward movement in your life.
Mm-hmm. For me, I know that not obsessing about my illness is an important thing. There are tons of Facebook groups and online communities for people that have Crohn's disease, and I am intentionally not part of any of them. And I'm not part of any of them because they're not allies. They are often people who are just incessantly complaining about what's wrong. They don't have a project. They're not trying to find things to do to make themselves better. And I feel like when I surround myself with people that are having a pity party, it's easy to get drawn into the pity party. So
Oh,
I'm very
yes.
intentional about cutting those things out. It's not to
Mhm.
say that their experiences aren't very real. There are times when I've gone into those groups when I've been really sick myself because I've been looking for information to see if someone else has had
Mhm.
this has dealt with what I'm dealing with in that moment so I can try to find help. But I go in looking for help and then I want to leave because I just see how much negativity there is in those groups. So I think it's really important too, if you're someone who is listening and you have a something, we all have a something, but you have some type of an illness and you're kind of down and out, try to surround yourself with people that are actually looking at what is possible versus people that are going to take you down further. I think that's a really important thing when it comes to your mindset.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where finding some new role models and allies was important for me. There wasn't anyone I knew or could find at the time with narcolepsy who'd done something that I wanted to replicate. But there were people who had had horrible childhoods,
Hmm.
people who had had cancer, people who had had things that I could let my brain say, look, we're either the same or they have it or had it harder.
Hmm.
So if they can do it, I can do it.
Hmm.
And that helped me so much because it gave me power against the terrorist in my mind. When it would say, no, you can't do those things, I'd say, but they did, but they
Hmm.
did, but they did.
Hmm. I use that if she can do it, I can do it a lot. Recently, I've written about Suzanne Evans, who I've never worked with Suzanne. I've met Suzanne, I think, once when we were speaking at an event together. But Suzanne's been very public about her health journey online, and she recently shared that she's lost over 100 pounds. And I don't think
Amazing.
I am 99.9% certain, based on the amount of time that it's taken and everything that she's posted, that she's not on something like Ozempic. She's actually working really, really hard at her eating and her exercise, and she's been at it for quite like over a year. And one of the things that she said is walking isn't real exercise like running is. And I was a little bit taken back because I think walking is a good form of exercise. And, there's lots of evidence online that would support that. I used to run and I stopped running because it hurt my joints. And when she wrote that, the first thing I wanted to do was defend walking because I'm up in northern Georgia right now and the hills kick my ass every single day. I remember saying to my husband, when is it going to get easier? When is it going to be easier to climb these hills? And it just doesn't seem to happen. But I decided that I was going to try to run again. And I'll tell you, the reason that I decided that I was going to try to run again is because the story that I was telling myself about my joints kind of got blown up. Because if Suzanne Evans can run when she is over 100 pounds overweight and she still has weight to lose, then I can run because I'm not carrying that amount of weight. I just need to I need to stretch before, I need to stretch after, I need to drink water, I need to take my time. And so over the past month, I've been running, 3 times a week because I have watched someone else who in my mind I perceive has it worse than I do things that I think I should be able to do. And so I think again, it's that role model that makes you think, okay, well, if she can do it, so can I. And I think that's important. And I think that's why it's so important that you wrote this book because what is it? 1% of people with narcolepsy will earn over $100,000 a year in life. Isn't
There's
that the
so many
stat?
stats. I tried to find as many PubMed sourced stats as I could to put in the book. And some of them were even worse than what I
Yeah.
originally had found, what I remembered having found. So
Yeah.
I suspect that was me protecting myself, essentially, remembering things not even as bad as they were. But yeah, most people with narcolepsy live below the poverty line,
Yeah.
and very few make six figures ever.
So talk to us a little bit about when you decide not to do hard stuff. So you talk a little bit about this in the book. Like sometimes you talk about this 12-week exercise program and how, you were on it and then you weren't. And so um, when do you, like, I want to know, when do you decide, okay, this is really hard, I'm not going to do it? And then when do you decide, okay, this is really hard and I've been really inconsistent, but I'm going to recommit and I'm going to do it?
I included the couch to marathon story because I feel like there's a lot of people that cover up their fear with what I think is procrastination. And it's hyper planning, over planning. I need to plan more, do more. I got to plan. I got to get the right shoes and I need the right socks. And actually, I need to research the different types of socks. And the shorts matter too. And you know what? I know I found couch to marathon, but maybe it should be half marathon. Let me look that up and then listen to some podcasts about the difference. You just aren't doing anything. You feel like you're doing so much. And
And
you see this in business too.
do you realize that people who do that, there's I read it in The Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday's book. There is actual evidence that the more you talk about and do that stuff, the more your brain actually thinks that you've finished the goal. And so it
Whoa.
actually psychologically hinders you from making progress because you've spent so much time talking about it and researching it and doing all this stuff that your brain is like almost thinking you've done the thing. And so your desire to do it goes down because you've talked so much about it versus actually doing it.
That's wild. It makes sense, right? You probably get so many dopamine hits from checking off boxes, and yet those boxes didn't actually move you forward.
Right.
So in that story, and I've done this other times too, I don't like to exercise. I wish I did. It would be nice if I did. It's not me. And so I've more than once in my life found myself trying to over plan for something, and I'll work my way up and maybe it should be Pilates, and that doesn't work for me because I don't actually want to do it truly deeply. I don't have a deep desire. So instead I have to use discipline, and what I won't do is quit on something I've actually truly started. So in the case of the marathon, although I will never do that again, because I continued to fail on my 12-week plan, and by fail, I mean by day 2 or 3, I stopped because my knees hurt. That nice joint story, right? And they barely hurt, but that was enough to give myself the excuse
Oops,
to
this might not
stop.
be good for me.
Yeah. Oh, darn. I tried my best. And so instead, I just did it. We just went and we did it. And it was awful. But we didn't quit because I'd actually started. And what that showed me is I am, in fact, fully capable of doing that. And I definitely don't want to. And I've done the same, with other health things. I've done 75 hard, where you have to work out twice a day, every day, 45 minutes, at least once is outside, and a bunch of other stuff. And I did it perfectly every single day, nailed it, lost weight, was so much fitter and happier. And then I did nothing because I finished the 75 days, just like I finished the marathon. And so clearly for me, if I'm not on something that has a very clear goal, I'm not going to do it, which is why I have this watch now And it's been over 100 days since I got it. And from the first day, I've completed all 3 rings. 2 days ago, I finished it at 2 minutes to midnight, but I finished it.
I love
I
it.
think a lot of us have things like that. It's not always health. It could be business, right? Maybe you hate bookkeeping. Maybe social media is the worst. And putting all these plans about planning to plan is making it actually harder for you versus saying, I'm going to sit here and I can't move until I do X amount, period.
Yeah. And I want to be clear. Michelle's not saying don't plan. She's saying don't overplan. When you
Yeah.
get caught in analysis paralysis, you stay in paralysis. So plan, but don't get stuck. Okay. My last question for you is about the dream method. So can you share with the audience what the dream method stands for? Walk us through the acronym and maybe just give everybody kind of a brief overview of how this can help them do hard things.
Yeah. So the dream method is the 5 steps to do anything hard to achieve your dreams. So step 1, D, is diagnose. You have to diagnose what you're actually afraid of. I could say, oh, I'm afraid of public speaking, but I'm not. If you think about it, it is a social fear. I'm afraid of messing up, which means I'm afraid of embarrassment. Paper dinosaur. Let's fix it. Then E, or R.
Do you need me to help you spell dream?
Look, it's been a long week. The book just launched and
and you're on my podcast recording at 9:30 in the morning, and you usually don't do anything before 10.
Oh, so important you are. R is role model. Find someone like you who's done it. So they don't have to be identical to you, but find something about them. Maybe they came from the same place. They might have the same ethnicity, the same type of childhood. Something about them is the same as you, and they've achieved something you want to achieve. It's probably not someone that you know personally. It's nice when it is, but they're an example for you of, if they can do it, so can I. And our brains need that.
And in the day of social media, it's so easy to ask for that. Who knows someone who has done this?
Yeah. And I actually love when I see something new on social media and I think, oh, this person has done what my friend X wants to do. And I get to send that profile to them and say, do you know about this person? And most times they don't. I love that because it's such a gift to give to someone, because when people have done that for me, it allows you to take an immediate jump forward because that glass ceiling in your brain is gone. So E is escalate. So that's those stairs. Start with something small and then bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to prove to yourself you, in fact, can do hard things. And the proof is over and over and over again it happening. I give some tangible examples of way to do that in business, as well as your personal life. And it's been the most effective tactic for me. It's the easiest to simply keep doing. A is our allies, which are the people in our life who are there to support us. They deeply want things for us, and they will do what they can to help. And they often haven't done what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes they have, which is nice, because then they can guide you and encourage you. But at its core, they are there to encourage you. When the terrorist in your head gets too loud, you can say, Lisa, I'm afraid people won't like my book. I don't want to send it to the publisher. And she, who didn't even read it until yesterday, which was scary enough for me, she wanted to read it in physical form, which I loved. And also, I was afraid. What if it's out there to the world and Lisa says this is the worst book I've ever read? But you need those people who, when you tell them you're scared, they say, but you can do it. And I know you can because I've read lots of your writing and it's always great. And you've got a good voice and you've got a good message. And they're the ones that help you be able to take another step forward or hit send or put up that post you need to. They're there to help you when the voice gets too loud.
A good ally helps you stay in motion. They don't help you
Mm-hmm.
stall out.
Yeah, they don't let you because they know what you really want. They know your dreams.
Mhm.
And the key to knowing if you have a good ally is, do they know what you really deeply want? Those things you care about that you're not just telling everyone on social media.
Mhm.
And then M is memorialize. And that is creating physical proof of all of the hard things you've done because it's very easy to forget them, especially as you move up that escalate chain. The feeling of success and joy and triumph that you got at those earlier levels, it almost disappears from your mind because the terrorist doesn't want you to think about those. And so having physical proof, like letters or ribbons or a closet full of shoes to celebrate those things that you did and achieved, allows your brain to not fall for the terrorist and instead see it and say, no, look, this is real. That's not real.
I love it. I love it. And I love how you've laid it out in the book and the stories that you have used to support each step and the questions that you have put in place for the reader to really consider. Like, I think, you could almost take all of your questions out of your book and create a workbook that goes with it. And that would be super valuable for people because, most people will read the book and they'll read the question, but they won't actually answer the question. And if they actually want to practice escalating, they'll take the time to grab a pen and a piece of paper and really jot things down.
Yeah, I love that. And I did try very intentionally to have a big variety of stories.
Mhm,
Although, we're both in business, it's not a business book solely. It is a people and life story.
mhm.
And for every step, there are 3 different stories meant to address 3 different types of people, essentially.
Yeah, it's a great book. Well, thank you, Michelle, for the first part of this two-part episode. If those of you who are listening, we are going to move into the second episode. You will receive that episode a week later, and that episode is going to be all about how Michelle approached writing this book. So if you're listening and you're thinking, wow, if she can do it, I can do it too, and you would like to write a book, then you will want to join us again next week to hear part 2 of this conversation. Thanks so much, Michelle, for being here, and congratulations on your book.
Thank you.